We're looking into financial discrepancies in the reports under your supervision. Please gather your things. That was it. Cold, no warning, no chance to explain. The conference room went silent, but I could feel the heat rising up the back of my neck. Chase wouldn't look me in the eye. He just stood there, arms crossed, leaning against the wall like he already knew how it would end. My name is Michael Dunn. I'm 52. I spent 18 years at Telford Logistics. Started as an admin assistant. Showed up before the coffee was brewed. Left after the janitor. Never complained. Never asked for anything. I just did my job. Quiet, but crucial. For years I kept the finance department running like clockwork. Then, 6 months ago, I got news I never thought I'd hear. I was promoted to finance coordinator. Too late? Maybe. But I took it with dignity. And that's when Chase stepped in. Nephew of the owner, 29, polished, expensive suits. Zero patience for anyone who'd been there before he was born. Always carried that look like he had all the answers. From the day I got promoted, he started hovering around my office. Passive-aggressive questions. Do people still use this system? Why haven't you upgraded to the new version? It was obvious. He wanted my chair. And he thought he deserved it not because he earned it, but because of his last name. But he made a mistake. He thought I was just another old guy buried in spreadsheets. He had no idea what I'd kept, or who I really was. And the irony? He was about to find out, the hard way. The first crack came quietly. Chase started copying the CEO on routine emails. Little jabs masked as concern. Michael, please confirm this report meets the standard. We had discrepancies last month. Last month? Nothing had ever been flagged. But now everything needed to be reviewed. Meetings happened without me. Duplicate reports were requested. Deadlines changed without notice. Files I had sent vanished from the system. Urgent requests I had never received suddenly showed up like I'd ignored them. It was obvious. The goal was to throw me off balance. I kept calm, started printing everything, saving copies, backing up versions. Most importantly, I tracked the access logs. The system we used recorded every login, every edit. It wasn't visible to everyone, but I knew exactly where to find it. 2 weeks after I presented the quarterly report directly to the CEO and got a rare but sincere nod of approval, everything shifted. My badge stopped working in the records room. Its excuse? Security system maintenance. The next morning, I walked into my office and found Chase in my chair, spinning slowly, dry smile on his face. We need to talk, Mike. I stayed standing. Some numbers aren't adding up. Legal's concerned. HR, too. You understand, right? I didn't say much. Just asked them to put it all in writing. The next day, I was called into an alignment meeting. Inside the room, Chase, Carol from HR, and a lawyer I'd never seen before. Michael, after reviewing recent reports under your supervision, we've found serious financial inconsistencies. Until the matter is fully investigated, you're being terminated for cause. Effective immediately. I stayed quiet. They waited. They expected a reaction. Panic, maybe. But my mind was somewhere else. I knew something they didn't. Chase had accessed those reports 3 times after the final submission. The logs were there, the timestamps, the file history, his username. I stood up, took a deep breath, grabbed my pen and notebook like I was just stepping out of an ordinary meeting. Chase smiled with his eyes. He thought he'd won. What he didn't know was that I was already 2 steps ahead. I got home earlier than ever that day. Ellen, my wife, looked at me without saying a word. She noticed the notebook under my arm and the silence that came with it. Was it today? She asked softly. I nodded, dropped my keys on the kitchen counter. The metallic clink echoed too loud in the quiet house. I sat on the couch without taking off my jacket. It still didn't feel real. What did they say? Misconduct. Inconsistent reports. Termination for cause. Ellen stood still for a moment. Then she walked over, placed a cup of coffee on the table, and sat beside me. Not a single word, just presence. There, in the quiet of our living room with the late afternoon light slipping through the curtain, it started to sink in. I had been discarded. Not because of a mistake, not because I failed, but because someone saw me as an obstacle in his way. Chase wanted my position. Now he had it. And me? I had a stained name, an entire career reduced to an accusation. I closed my eyes and saw flashes of the past years, unpaid overtime, meetings on holidays, spreadsheets redone in the middle of the night, numbers checked down to the decimal. The day my father died and I still showed up for work because no one else knew how to close the East Branch books. All of that, reduced to one signature on a piece of paper and a rehearsed line. The next morning I woke up before the sun, body still on autopilot, coffee, shirt, watch. Only there was nowhere to go. The silence of a broken routine was deafening. In my home office, I opened an old drawer. There they were, my external hard drives organized by year. I grabbed the most recent one, plugged it into my laptop. Click by click, the directories unfolded. Reports, spreadsheets, screenshots, logs. In the folder labeled Contingency 2022, I found what I was looking for. The internal access logs, a feature I had helped build years ago. Almost no one knew it existed, at least not with that level of detail. And there it was, a pattern. Each of the 3 inconsistent reports had log entries after the final submission, all traced back to Catelford 92, Chase, after-hours access, unauthorized logins, tiny edits just enough to throw off the numbers. I just sat there, heart beating slow, like time itself was waiting for my reaction. This was my card to play, my quiet answer. But what if no one believed me? I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair. The ceiling felt farther away than usual. And then I remembered the day I got promoted. Chase hadn't been at the meeting but showed up minutes later to congratulate me. Not sure it was the most strategic decision, but good luck, Mike. You'll need it. Back then, I thought it was just arrogance. Now I knew better. It was a warning. Veiled, but clear. That night, Ellen found me in the same spot she'd left me that morning. She took my hand the way she always did when I'd been quiet for too long. Are you just going to let this go? No. My voice came out low, steady, for the first time without doubt. So what are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to remember who I am and what I know. But one thing was still missing. A link, something that could turn evidence into consequences. I thought I still needed time, but time was already moving on its own. It took me days to clear my mind. I didn't want to act out of anger. This wasn't about blind revenge. It was about clarity, about justice. Ellen knew me too well to push, but every time she walked past the office and saw the files open, I felt her gaze steady, like she was saying, do it, but do it right. The following week, I made a call I hadn't made in years. Lisa Cardell, former legal manager at Telford. She left 2 years ago after a conflict with Chase. Coincidence? Michael? It's been a while. I heard what happened. Are you okay? I am. But they won't be for long. We met at a quiet cafe on the far side of town. I showed her the logs, the files, the access records. She read everything in silence, then looked at me. You kept all this? Auto backup. Habit. She smiled, no sarcasm. You realize this? It's heavy, right? Enough to trigger an internal investigation. Maybe more. I know. But I don't want my job back. I just want the truth out. Lisa took a deep breath. Then let's do it right. She guided me through how to organize the data clear. Chronological, professional. No personal tone. No bitterness, just facts. That's what scares liars the most. The coldness of truth. Over the next few days, I built the dossier, file by file, screenshot by screenshot, side-by-side reports comparing the originals to the altered versions, all time-stamped. Even the emails from Chase demanding explanations for mistakes he had inserted himself were saved. And somewhere in that quiet process of sorting it all, a memory hit me like a punch to the gut. Back in 2017, Chase was still an intern. One day, he ran into my office, pale. Mike, the system froze. I accidentally deleted the quarterly spreadsheet. Can you recover it? I did. And I warned him back then about accessing files without proper knowledge. He just shrugged. I'm a Telford, remember? I have access to everything. That day, he showed me who he was. I just took too long to see it. That memory became the opening paragraph of my report. I finished the dossier a week later. It was technical, clean, irrefutable. Ellen walked into the room as I was printing the final page. Who are you going to give it to? Someone who can actually do something about it. And who would that be? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Someone Chase underestimated just as much as he underestimated me. I called Robert Hayes, one of the minority partners at Telford Logistics, former CFO, retired, honest, private. He'd always had a quiet respect for me. Michael, this is a surprise. Robert, I need 15 minutes. Just 15. No favors. Just your attention. Pause. Come tomorrow. Bring everything you've got. And be ready. That night I slept without waking up in a cold sweat for the first time. I was ready, but what I didn't know was that the universe had its own move lined up, and it would land before I ever stepped into Mr. Hayes' office. I arrived at Robert Hayes' house with the blue folder under my arm. He greeted me like a man who understood the weight someone carries when they show up with that kind of look in their eyes. We sat in his study, dark wood shelves lined with old books behind him. A respectful silence. No rush. Go ahead, Michael. I opened the folder and handed him a printed copy of the dossier. He began reading. Slowly, his expression shifted, eyebrow raised, lips pressed tight. He accessed the files after they were finalized. 3 times. He made changes, small ones, barely noticeable, but just enough to throw off the numbers and point the blame at me. Robert flipped through to the end, stopping at the page with the access logs. This is solid. It's going to make waves. I'm not looking for noise, Robert. I just want it to stop. I don't want anyone else going through what I did. He sat in silence for a moment. Then he said something I won't forget. Quiet justice is the most effective kind. They don't hear shouting, but they fear paperwork. He made 2 phone calls that very afternoon. One to a longtime company advisor, another to an external auditor he trusted. I didn't ask for names. I didn't need to. In the days that followed, I kept working behind the scenes. I created encrypted copies of the dossier and saved them in multiple places. One in my safe, another with Lisa, a third uploaded to a cloud account anonymous, set to automatically send the files to 3 news outlets if anything happened to me. Precaution, not paranoia. During that process, I got an unexpected message. It was from Elijah, a junior analyst on the finance team, a kid I had personally trained. Mike, can I call you? I think something's wrong here. We spoke that same night. His voice was shaking. They're asking me to review old report, but with specific instructions on what to correct. Thing is, those reports were already closed. Signed. Is that normal? No. It never was. I told him to write everything down. Dates, times, names. Not to email it. Print it. Keep it at home. The company was in containment mode. Chase, feeling the walls close in, was trying to cover his tracks. But he didn't realize he was leaving new ones as he went. 2 days later, I got another message. This time from Hannah from the internal legal department. Michael, I can't say much, but HR is nervous. Chase is in closed-door meetings every day, and his name just showed up in a cross-check audit from accounting. The link between unauthorized access and the accounting errors, it was starting to spread. And I hadn't even pushed the button yet. That same night, Ellen found me reviewing the plan for the 10th time. Is everything ready? It is. Then what's missing? I stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then I answered. The trigger. Something external. A push they can't ignore. She gave a soft smile. Then breathe. The universe is always on time. The next morning, the universe knocked on my door. Literally. A plain brown envelope, no return address, had been left in my mailbox. Inside, a service contract, signed by Chase. And the recipient? A shell company registered under the name of one of his close friends. The contract involved outrageous amounts, well above market rates, with recurring payments. Apparently, Chase didn't just want my position. He needed it to hide something bigger. And now, I had enough to bring down more than just a name. The next morning, before the sun came up, there was fresh coffee on the table and the opened envelope right beside it. I was reading through the contract for the 3rd time, yellow highlighter in hand. Vague terms. Strategic consulting on financial processes. Monthly fee, $40,000. Provided by a company that, with a quick search, had no website, no phone number, no listed employees. But the name of the legal representative was there. Brad L. Morrison. I knew him. Chase's golf buddy. Not subtle, not professional, And now, not invisible, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on instinct. Mr. Dunn? This is Melissa from Wilmore Partners. One of our clients approached us to review recent contracts involving Telford Logistics, and your name came up in some internal notes. Would you be available to talk? Wilmore Partners, a financial compliance firm, specializing in internal audits for major investment groups. The client, I quickly guessed, was one of the silent investors Robert had warned me about. Of course. Can you tell me what this is about? Only in person, today if possible. We scheduled for 3 p.m. discreet meeting, office with no signage, mirrored windows. Melissa was direct. What do you know about the third-party contracts signed over the past 6 months? I answered calmly, handed her the same dossier I'd given Robert now with Brad Morrison's contract added. She read silently. When she finished, she said only, "Thank you. This will speed things up." I walked out of that building with the feeling that something had shifted. And it had. The next morning, Elijah sent me a nervous message. "Mike, something's happening. They've suspended access for Chase's entire team. Told him to work from home. HR's gone silent." Later, Hannah from legal confirmed. The CEO called an emergency meeting with the partners. No official agenda. But I overheard external audit in the hallway. The pressure was building. And still, I hadn't revealed everything. Not directly. I still held the most powerful weapon, time. Let them trip over their own footprints. But just when I thought I controlled the pace, the explosion hit. 3 days later, a quiet article appeared on a local business news site. Company linked to Telford Logistics received over $200,000 in no-bid contracts. Anonymous source, straightforward writing, precise numbers, the first leak. And it didn't come from me. That same day, Chase called me. For the first time, his voice had cracks in it. "Michael, can we talk? Now you want to talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." I almost laughed. "Chase, you had access to everything, even the security system. But you forgot the one thing that mattered most." "What's that?" "The system had eyes." I hung up. That night, Ellen looked at me with the calm of someone who knew how the story would end before it was even written. And now I finished what I started. I sent the final version of the dossier to Robert, to Melissa, and with a temporary password, to 3 members of the audit committee who had been with the company since I first joined in 2004. I didn't write a single accusation. I simply pointed to the path. The next morning, I received a short email from Robert. "Get ready. The consequences begin tomorrow." What I didn't know was what consequences would really mean. Robert's email arrived at 7:11 the next morning. Subject: urgent. Emergency meeting scheduled. Attached was an internal memo. The board of directors at Telford Logistics was officially launching an internal investigation into contracts signed over the past 12 months, with special focus on the financial reports from my time as coordinator. At the bottom, in small but unflinching print, was Chase Telford's name, temporarily removed from all duties pending conclusion of the audit. I took a deep breath. Ellen, sitting beside me with her coffee, gently touched my arm. "Is it time?" "Yes." That afternoon, Chase emailed me. Subject: "Can we talk confidential?" I ignored it. The next day, I received a letter by mail signed by Telford's legal department. "We kindly request a meeting for clarification and potential collaboration with the external audit." Translation: they wanted to know how much I knew and how much I could prove. I replied with the same courtesy. "All relevant material has already been submitted to the appropriate parties. I remain available upon formal request from the board." 2 days later, Robert called me. "Michael, what you did, it was surgical. I just showed them what no one wanted to see." He exhaled. "Chase is trying to negotiate. Says mistakes were made, but he was misled by others. He's positioning himself as the victim. He's always had that gift, making himself the hero of his own story. So now what? Now, let the numbers speak. They're quiet, but they destroy reputations in seconds." That same weekend, Elijah sent me a voice message. His voice was shaky. "Mike, you have no idea. The atmosphere here has changed. We feel free to speak up, to point out what's wrong. You opened a door." I sat in silence for a while after hearing that, because that's when it hit me. Real revenge was never about the title or clearing my name. It was about giving sight back to those walking in the dark. It was about clearing a path. The following Monday, I received an unexpected email. The address was from Telford. Subject: offer to return new position. The message was clear. The board had created a new role, Director of Operational Integrity, reporting directly to the board. Full autonomy over internal processes and compliance practices. An invitation to lead the restructuring. But what struck me most was the final paragraph. We recognize the error in judgment made previously. Your ethics and quiet resolve taught us more than any speech ever could. Signed by 3 board members, Emma and Robert. I showed the email to Ellen. She read it all, silently, then looked at me with a question in her eyes she didn't need to say out loud. So, I stood up from the table, walked to the window. The street was calm. Same neighborhood as always. Same view for years. But inside me, nothing was the same. My answer would come, but not right then. First, I needed to remember why I started all this in the first place, and decide if it was truly worth returning to the place that once tried to silence me. The night I received the offer to return, I barely slept. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house as if they were new, the ticking of the clock in the living room, the creak of the old wooden floor, the silence between one thought and the next. They wanted me back, but not because they regretted what they'd done, because they needed me. And there's a subtle but brutal difference between being wanted and being necessary. The next morning, I went to Robert's office. I asked him to schedule a meeting with the board. I wanted to give them my answer in person. When I walked into the room, they were all there. Serious. Tension in the air. Robert spoke first. Michael, before anything else, we want to thank you for the way you handled all this. Your silence spoke louder than the internal noise around here. And we want you to know, the position is yours with full autonomy. I looked at him, then at the others, waited a second longer than necessary. I appreciate the gesture, but before I accept or decline, I have one question. Of course. Did anyone here apologize? Silence. Eyes shifted. Someone cleared their throat. A glass was adjusted on the table. None of you came to me when I was falsely accused. No calls. No one offered to hear my side. And now, when the ground starts to shake suddenly, I exist again. Robert looked uncomfortable. One of the directors tried to respond. It was a procedural failure, Michael, but I raised my hand to stop him. It wasn't just procedure. It was a choice. You chose to believe the more convenient version, and I was collateral damage. I opened my folder and took out a single page. Not a contract. A letter. If you truly want change, this is my only condition. I don't return as an employee. I don't come back as a piece in the system. I return as an external consultant, independent, with full access and veto power over internal practices, reporting directly to the board. No ties to the executive chain. More silence, more exchanged looks. Then, one of the older board members who hadn't said a word until then finally spoke. You don't want to come back. I looked straight at him. I don't want to lose myself. I stood up, placed the letter on the table, and walked out without looking back. The next day, I got a call. They had accepted every condition, but I already knew what my decision would be. Hours later, I received an offer from a competing firm, a new project, from the ground up, with freedom, with values that actually aligned with mine. 2 roads lay before me. One would take me back to the place where I was broken, but this time with the power to rebuild it. The other invited me to create something new, the right way, from the start. And it was there, walking with Ellen along a quiet, wooded trail, that she squeezed my hand and asked, "Are you going back?" I stopped, took a deep breath, and said, "No. Some structures aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to collapse." She smiled, and in that smile, there was peace. That night, I replied to Telford with a single sentence. "Thank you for the offer, but I don't return to where I was discarded." The next morning, I accepted the new proposal, and with it, I carried more than experience. I carried dignity. I carried truth, and the unshakable certainty that respect is not begged for. It's commanded with silence, strategy, and courage. 3 months later, I walked into my new office for the first time. It wasn't a glass tower. No rehearsed smile receptionist. No gourmet coffee. But it had something rare. Trust. The company was smaller, focused on financial solutions for growing startups. Young people, eager to learn. When they heard I was joining, they didn't ask about my age. They asked what I wanted to build. In my first meeting with the team, I made one thing clear. I'm not here to put out fires, I'm here to stop them from starting. They applauded. Not because they had to, but because they understood. The following week, I reinforced one basic principle. Everything documented, everything repeatable, nothing hidden in brilliant, lonely minds. The culture of transparency I had always dreamed of was now official policy. On the second Friday, I got an unexpected visitor. It was Elijah, wearing a worn-out blazer, a folder under his arm. I left Telford. I imagine the mood over there isn't great. He nodded. They're scrambling to rebuild. Chase was formally let go. HR's a minefield. And word is, the offer you turned down sent the board into panic. I gave a small smile. They never understood. It was never about the title. So, any room for someone like me here? I answered before he could finish. There's already a desk with your name on it. Elijah started the following week. And soon after, 2 more former colleagues joined, tired of the same cycle of silence and blame. We built a team of people who had seen the worst and chose to do better. One afternoon, while reviewing contracts in the meeting room, I got an email. Subject, audit closure, Telford Logistics. I opened it. In the body of the message, a summary. Contract fraud, report tampering, and favoritism toward shell companies were confirmed. Responsible parties removed. New controls being implemented. Thank you for your initial collaboration. Your role was instrumental. I archived the email. It didn't belong to me anymore. Outside, the sun was starting to dip below the horizon. I stepped out onto the balcony where Ellen was waiting with 2 mugs of tea. Thinking about going back? No. Any regrets about turning down the position? Not for a second. She looked at me with that serene smile, the kind you only wear when you've always known how the story ends. And there, with the city stretching out in front of us and the quiet comfort between 2 people who had already been through enough, I realized something. True victory isn't about coming back on top. It's about not needing to go back at all. Sometimes structures collapse and we think it's the end. But some falls are freedom in disguise. Have you ever felt that? Ever had to choose between going back or moving on? And if you did, which road did you take?